Hello, let's get started. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to session 2.3, which is Accelerating Private Sector Clean Energy Investment, which is part of the private sector track. It's one of the 4 sessions, which has been established for the very first time in ASIF's 18-year history. Acknowledging the importance of private sector in driving innovation of new technologies, developing new business model, public-private collaborations, and of course, scaling up investment in the clean energy space. So it's my pleasure to be the moderator for this event. My name is Won. I am the unit head for Greater Mekong Region Infrastructure Finance team based out of Bangkok for ADB. So our private sector team, we provide financing support to private sector clients in the infrastructure space, and we cover 5 countries in the region, so Thailand, Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos, and Myanmar. So yeah, let's kick off the session, and I think we would start off with Peter Story from PFAN. He will provide us with a background and context of the topic at hand and set the scene for our discussions this morning. So Peter, let me just brief introduction to Peter. So Peter is a financing professional specialized in developing countries and transition economies with significant expertise in renewable energy as well as other infrastructure sectors. He has held senior positions with major European banks and project developers and has over 30 years of experience working in multidisciplinary advisory and financing mandates. He's a global coordinator of PFAN, which is Private Financing Advisory Network. So Peter.
Thank you, Won. Good morning, everybody. Great pleasure to be here at ASIF again and to have the opportunity of introducing this topic. I want to start with a couple of key messages about where I think we are in climate finance at the moment. And just to sort of give you an idea of my background in the topic. I think Won's mentioned my personal background. The Private Financing Advisory Network is a network of professionals, and we are essentially a project preparation facility working to mobilize and accelerate investment into clean energy finance in developing countries. It's an organization hosted by the United Nations and funded by the US, Norway, Sweden, and Australia. And we've been quite successful at mobilizing finance, as I'll tell you in a minute. My 3 messages to start this session this morning is really positive. Finance is growing. On the slide here at the moment, you've got 3 graphics. The first one on the left shows the development of climate finance in the Asian region over the last 10, 15 years, starting from about 10 billion in 2006, which was the first ASEF, to about 140 billion in 2021. Those are UNEP figures. IRENA, the figures are a little bit higher. That's the good news, and it's growing relatively fast. The problem is it's not enough. If you look at the right-hand graphic at the top there, that gives you an idea of what we need to be mobilizing to meet Paris SDG goals over the next years up to 2020, up to 2050. So it's nowhere near enough. And I heard a figure earlier this week in Asia, the figure for the energy transition 2050, an annual requirement of about 4 trillion in Asia alone. So we're nowhere near that at the moment. And the bottom is a bit of an anecdotal thing around PFAN. PFAN has raised 3 billion over the 16, 17 years that it's been operational. And we work with small to medium companies and projects. So we're extremely proud of that. And it's interesting that over the time we've been in operation, it took us 10 years for the first billion, 5 years for the second billion, and about just under 2 years for the third billion. So the acceleration has been tremendous. And I think that's anecdotal and indicative of what's happening in the region and everywhere else at the moment. But it's still nowhere near enough. And it's cumbersome, it's fundamentally flawed, it's not an efficient process. Why isn't it an efficient process? I think we're facing some real challenges. And at PFAN, we like to look at the funding process in this funnel that I've put on the slide here. And we have a huge amount of funding coming into the topic, into the region at the moment, but it's top down. At the top of the funnel, it's relatively easy for companies to raise money, but those companies and projects are larger, they're investment grade, they're mature, proven technologies. And as we go down the funnel, as the companies get smaller, as we go into the SME space, as the tickets get smaller, we find that the companies have increasing problem in raising money. The funnel gets narrower. And the problem that we face is that project preparation and investment identification is bottom up. It's a case-by-case thing. We have to identify the projects one by one, and the money is top down in large chunks. So we've got to find a way of matching the top-down funding with the bottom-up process of project identification and development. Challenges that we see, I think very much the shallow investment markets, shallow capital markets in some of the regions that we operate, particularly in the Asia region, perhaps. We're faced at the moment by high interest rates. This is a challenge that we haven't seen for many, many years. Many of the business models, particularly energy access, are predicated on low interest rates. How are these business models going to function in a high interest rate scenario? We don't yet know. So that's another thing. We have a return gap, particularly as we go down the funnel. The companies that we're working with, the projects that we're working with, are not able to provide the returns, the risk-related returns that the investors want. So there's the return gap. And we don't have good data to be able to price risk. Really, really important problem. We've heard lots of information this week about programs that are providing data, but we need many more of those to provide that good data to be able to price risk. If we can't price risk, the risk goes up and the cost of financing goes up. The cost of financing and the whole financing process becomes much more difficult for the companies that we're working with. Some of the opportunities for perhaps addressing this. I think we need much more mezzanine financing than we've been able to mobilize to date. We need funding, particularly blended funding, to come in much lower in the funnel process through subsidies, credit enhancement, guarantees, other risk mitigation features. We need project preparation facilities to work on identifying projects and actually bringing them to market. And we need to make the project development process much more integrated. We have the tools for identifying, developing, and facilitating investment into projects, but those tools aren't joined up. For a project developer, it takes a huge amount of time and effort to go from one program to the next to get the support that they need to get to financial closure. We need to bring that together, integrate it more. We need more people, educated, capable, technical, commercial people into the system. We need more organizations like PFAN to really work with the networks and work with the project developers and companies on the ground to be able to bring the projects bottom up and push them up to the money that's up there. The money is there, but we've got to match the bottom and the top, the project supply with the funding supply. I hope the panelists today are going to provide us some of the answers to these questions, and I'm looking forward to a very interesting, invigorating discussion to help solve some of these issues. With that, back to Juan.
Thank you, Peter. So next up, we have 4 speakers. They will be presenting their presentations. They will have 10 minutes each. And so the sequence is after all the presentations are completed, then we will do the Q&A, open to the floor. But throughout the presentations, you're welcome and feel free to pose your questions through the app. I think you all know the drill. So there's an Event Air app. And please pose any questions that you have comes up in your mind throughout the process. So with that, let me call up our first speaker, Ranishka. He's a senior energy specialist at ADB and covering energy sector in the South Pacific countries. He possesses over 19 years of professional experience in energy sector activities, policy formulation, promotion of renewable energy, energy efficiency, and infrastructure development. The floor is yours, Ranishka.
Good morning, and thank you, Juan. I remember when I was a kid, I think I was in grade 3, was about 8 years old. That was a time that, your class teachers ask you, who do you want to be when you grow up? So my first choice selection was to become an engineer. Probably I was influenced by one of my uncles who was working in Zambia, and he was an engineer. When he comes for holidays, he tells all these stories about what engineers does. But when I was a kid, then when I was at 8, I was thinking big. And it relates to this story in Tonga, which is a very small country, and how do they think big? Anyone of here have heard of Tonga? Okay, few of them has heard about Tonga. It's a tiny little country in the Pacific Ocean, but beautiful country. You can see the photos. About 100,000 people, 177 islands, only 36 are inhabited. 75% of them live in the main island, which is called Tongatapu, where the capital is Nuku'alofa. As I said, beautiful country and also lovely people. Tonga energy sector, you can see the size of it. The peak demand is 12 megawatt. If you are from India, Thailand, Vietnam, you would laugh. Installed capacity is about 26.8 megawatts, predominantly diesel, but also, interestingly, towards the last few years, they're building small-scale solar. The latest being 6 megawatts. I will come to that. And also, there's a wind, small scale, funded by Japan. The network is 11 kV. That's what they call it, high voltage. And also the 400 volts for the distribution. This project, which is called Tonga Renewable Energy Project, we call it TREP. This was funded by ADB, GCF, and the government of Australia. This was approved in 2019. The intention was to provide the required battery energy storage system that is the largest component of the project to catalyze the private sector building renewable energy because the intermittency can be handled by these batteries. The size of the battery, 24 megawatt hours, 10 megawatt, largest in the Pacific. And this is 100% grant funded. Also, it had few other components like grid-connected renewable energy in the outer islands. So they have 4 island groups. 2 island groups are covered by this project. And also mini grids, renewable hybrid mini grids for the small outer islands, very tiny small islands, like 300 kilowatts, 400 kilowatt systems. And also capacity building and project management. This is obviously for the project itself, and also capacity building for the utility, which is TPL, Tonga Power Limited, and also for the government. Some of the photos of the project, the battery storage systems and the outer islands, solar plus mini grids. And same, so the solar is from outer island project. Now, the game changer, this is the point. Because of the batteries, soon after the batteries were commissioned, we had a lot of issues commissioning batteries because that was during the COVID, and the contractor was in Europe, and then he was not able to come to Tonga, borders were closed, and we had challenges in commissioning the batteries. The batteries were delivered before COVID, but then we had to have different mechanism of remotely commissioning and all those challenges. Okay, let's put that aside. The 6 megawatt IPP from the private sector came to the picture because of the batteries. And it was commissioned last year, December, but the construction was happening for about 1.5 years. And the government realized the role that the private sector can play. So this is the first IPP. Because you have the relevant infrastructure in place. The government had a 70% renewable energy plan to achieve this by 2030. And last year, in August, they decided that they want to expedite it. Anyone can think of the target year? I thought achieving it in 2030 is still a challenging and very ambitious target. The last year, they said they want to achieve it by 2025. I was not happy initially with the government decision, had a 1 week long meetings with them, tried to explain, you should not do that, let's do it slowly. They were very adamant. Fortunately, there's no one from the Tongan government here. But then we realized, okay, if the government wants to achieve this, we have a role to play to do it correct, to have the correct competition, achieve the best prices, and also minimize the risk. Then we started, because we were anyway doing the technical studies, the financial modeling for them to achieve 70% by 2030. And we just had to do the modeling again, so remodeling, and then come up with the numbers, because the earlier plan had even had wind, solar. It was a combination of renewable energy technologies. So we had to redo that within a few months. We did the tariff modeling, because at the end of the day, what is important for the government and for the policymakers is what is the impact you get on the tariff. We did all that modeling and then decided, okay, we will support them with the transaction advisory from the public sector side. And the risk associated with that is the identification of the land and the evacuation infrastructure, transmission lines, the batteries. And we had a EOI a couple of years ago, shortlisted 7 private sector participants, and we went to those 7 and then did a RFP again. Now, RFPs were closed early this year. So far, we have evaluated and even negotiated with the first rank IPP. And the size of this, 20 megawatts and 50 megawatt hours of battery. And you can imagine the size of that compared to the country. Lands, as I mentioned earlier, identified and negotiated. The grid strengthening requirements, ADB already committed to take care of the grid strengthening work with the support of the other donors, obviously EU and New Zealand MFAT. So up to now, they have gone in a path where a small country couldn't even imagine. A lot of challenges, obviously. Many would think, and if you have participated in the private sector track during the last couple of days, you would realize that a lot of us are talking about crowding out the private sector funding and the need for the private sector funding and the limitation of the private sector funding, and also why the public sector comes into the private sector space. But this project actually proved otherwise, just because of the public sector involvement, catalyzing and making the environment for the private sector to participate. And you wouldn't believe, if this happens, this would be the largest private sector investment for energy sector in the Pacific. And the prices that we have received from this is the cheapest PPA tariff that we have received in the Pacific. I can't divulge the number because it is sensitive and confidential, but this is the cheapest tariff that we have got. And when you think about it, I met these two little kids when I was there last month. One is Epa, the other one is Mickey. And when I asked the question, I had a long chat with them. When I asked the question, what do you want to be? One of them said, an engineer. I was surprised, and it reminded me of my early days. Just like these kids have long, big ambitions, but the challenges are huge. They live in a small island called Ofu, only 60 families. There's a primary school only. And if they really want to become an engineer, they have to travel to the main island and then study abroad and become an engineer. Tonga is similar. We have supported them. Funding is available. We have brought the private sector into the table. The funding is available, but if they want to achieve 70% renewable energy by 2025, that's a huge challenge. But hope Tonga not only can think big, but they can act because. Malo.
Well, thank you very much. Next up, next speaker is Ragini. So she's the Executive Director of Caspian Debt, a development finance professional with more than 20 years of experience in microfinance, impact investment, and mainstreaming gender in financing. Ragini, the floor is yours.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for having us here and especially giving me an opportunity. So, I will be zooming in to the little red triangle Peter story showed in the morning. How does the funding reach to SMEs, MSMEs, and what are the enabling conditions? What is the right kind of funding for them? So some of the challenges you mentioned, of course, they filter through the funnel and it becomes harder. But I want to zoom in on how equity and debt can coexist and also complement and help the companies grow. So we can move it. Yeah. So I represent Caspian Debt. We are an impact debt provider based out of India. We provide customized collateral-free debt to SMEs in impact sectors. We've dispersed over 375 million in last 10 years to 235 high impact companies. We are a gender lens investor. We've qualified to be the 2X flagship fund. And also we are first signatory to this partnership for financial accounting. So we sort of gender and climate are sort of horizontal themes for us. And we provided loans to over 60 companies, 60 climate smart companies since 2018. So that was about us. Now I think I'll just go back to the basics that why does an SME or a company need an equity at all? And some of you here are entrepreneurs, you know what equity can do to a company. So any innovation that we have seen has been funded by equity. Otherwise, it wouldn't be in our hands, whether it is a post-it note from 3M or a phone, iPhones that we use or any other thing that we use. So we need that for funding innovation. So you can imagine a life cycle of a company where it starts, it has a technology, it has an idea, but it is yet to sort of build a viable product which can go to the market. So that's where the equity comes in and it helps you find the product market fit. And once you've found the customers, then many times equity sort of fuels your growth to be able to achieve, you capture the market, you become the first entrant, and you create entry barriers for others. Then, of course, everybody knows that the wealth begets wealth. So when you have equity funds, you get more funds, whether it is debt or equity. And equity is sort of the risk capital because it de-risks investors and suppliers. So why is it that I'm saying that equity is not allowing debt to come in? So let me give you some examples. I'll talk about two companies. I'll talk about what different trajectories they've taken to growth. So let's look at this company. It's a climate tech company set up by two engineers, scientists. They were trying to, I think I've gone a little further. Can we go a slide back, please? Yeah, sorry. It was set up by two engineering graduates from Premier. They went out to solve the air quality problem. So imagine the company was set up in 2016. They were developing the technology. They received the first equity check in 2019. And that sort of fueled them to take it to the market. They got a revenue. They were at a 43, they increased the revenue by 200%, gross margins 43. They were on the verge of being profitable. And that's when, because they had paying customers and receivables, they decided to take a working capital loan. And in 22, they take a working capital loan, they reach a particular stage. In 22, they get another major round of equity, around 2.75 million. And they immediately decide that the loan is costly, they repay it back. And within a year, they have spent a lot on developing new technologies, finding new markets, and they realize that their revenue is increased only by 38%, but the cost by 62%. And they are left with only a cash runway of 5 months. So they go back, get and apply for debt again to increase the runway. So that is one way. There is another company that they're trying to risk climate problem in agriculture. They're scientists, so they get a professional. They set up in 2009. They find a professional CEO in 2015. They focus on profitability and growth, and they take a first working capital loan when they are at a revenue of 300K. And by then, other two lenders also come in. In 2021, their revenues have grown, they've been profitable, and they've repurposed the same technology for other B2B customers. They also reached the revenue of around 2 million and a gross margin, but continue to remain profitable. Okay, so these are both the companies reached around 2 million kind of revenue, one with substantial equity raise, another with very little and using debt. So basically what these companies are trying to achieve, they're trying to achieve the holy trinity of scale, profitability, and impact. But they took different paths to get there. They both have 2 million revenues. One achieved it with a capital raise of 4.6 million and another with just 250K. You know, the first company is yet to make profits. They will need a very higher, they will need a next round of equity. But the other company has been profitable, but one achieved growth in 8 years and another in 12. So that's a key. So now, why should we be worried about how the capital is used, which kind of capital is used? You know, the reason is that we all know that capital is very scarce. And as Peter pointed out in his scene setting presentation, that though a lot of capital is coming to climate, it is not enough. There is still a gap. And the way it comes in, it can fly out as well. Because we've seen this in India, and I'll tell you more about that in the next slide. And again, how founders are spending their time in raising capital or building technology is also something to think about. climate tech, as we all know, is still evolving. It's not, we don't have one fix at this moment, that one green hydrogen technology or one where we can put in all our money in. It is still sort of evolving. And frugal innovation and cash management discipline has never hurt anybody, whether you are small or big, you know. So the reason why this matters, and I think I'm not preaching to the choir here, lots of investment is required. And, you know, Peter spoke about it in the morning, 4 trillion alone in Asia. However, we all know that market principles apply to all investments. So if you don't make money, if you don't return capital, then it's likely to go out. And we know all the fads that come in the investment industry. Like in India, during COVID, education sector was the hottest. But after COVID, as it did not meet up the requirements of growth, scale, and profitability, it was the first one to be dropped like a hot potato. And this is something we cannot afford to happen in climate. We need sustained long-term investments, where the market principles apply, right? And each sources, whether it is debt or equity, each has its unique cases. For innovation, technology, you use equity, but using equity for working capital would be a colossal waste of that capital. And, you know, each of those sources is important. So finally, I want to leave you with this thought that there are companies which develop technology and there are companies which deploy technology. So the companies which are always innovating, developing new technologies, finding market fit, and innovating and becoming more efficient would need sustained kind of equity investment. And those companies which deploy technology through various ways like EV or project management, these are the companies which would need more debt. And most of the company lies somewhere in between. So what is needed is collaboration and sending the right amount and right kind of capital behind technologies which will help us live in the world that we would like to live in. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ragini. Just to remind everyone that you can ask questions through the app, so please feel free to pose your questions there. Okay, next up, our speaker is Kun Nichari from EGAT. So yeah, she has an experience in sustainable development field for 6 years at the Electricity Generating Authority of Thailand. She is developing an ESG model to support the renewable energy in Thailand. She also works on building ESG ecosystem in the country between energy and the financial sector for both public and private companies, and educate all the sector in the country. So, floor is yours.
Oh, sorry. Good morning, everyone. First of all, I would like to thank you, ADB, for hosting the Clean Asia Energy Forum 2023. It's such an honor to be here. And I would like to say a background of EGAT. Yeah, as we know that now energy sector is shifting to more green and clean energy, where it's now targeting to be a carbon neutrality and net zero goal in soon. EGAT, we are the country main organization to target to generate and secure power reliability in Thailand. We are so less prone in carbon neutral policy under the National Energy Plan in order to achieve the goal to decrease the carbon emission to zero. By focusing on increase the proportion of RE, and we set the RE ratio not less than 50%. And we also promoting on electric vehicle and develop and upgrade power system by grid modernization to support decentralized power generation in microgrid system, as well as we want more prosumer production We aiming to unlock the power purchase regulator to support prosumer production. And now, as you might wonder how energy sector will drive the ESG. In 2022, according to the source information from Energy Policy and Planning Office, we found that Thailand energy use is increased more slightly to 1.5%. And yes, the most energy sector, the most sector that who main emission is more than 36% is energy sector. That's why ICAT will take action to help Thailand decrease CO2 emission by targeting to be a carbon neutrality organization. Sorry. And we also have a roadmap to decarbonization to support our goal as a carbon neutrality organization in 2050. We accomplished our goal by taking an action immediately with our project and strategy. By the triple S strategy, which are source transformation, sync co-creation, and support measure mechanism. First, the source transformation we do by improve ourselves first. ICAT, as well as we are the main country organization to generate and secure power reliability in Thailand. So we step in to increase the renewable energy proportion. And we also have like a hydro floating solar to it is the hybrid generating on RE, which use the surface in them more efficiency. We also support for the new portion of RE by improving the grid modernization. And ICAT, as we know that now Thailand is increased slightly in RE portion, so the REC market is the big market in Thailand. ICAT, we have been entrusted by the IREC standard to be the local issuer. So we try to drive and facilitate REC market in Thailand and neighbor country. For the sync co-creation is to absorb more carbon dioxide. We are joining hand with our partner to reforest an area for 1 million rai in 2030. And we're also planning to deploy a carbon capture utilization storage or CCUS in ICAT power plant. And the last one is support measure mechanism. This one is to promoting public participation of greenhouse gas reduction by focusing on a power saving, like we have a project on number 5 energies label saving project. And also we promote on the electric vehicle, also the wallbox charging and the charging station that hosted by ICAT. And however, to achieve the goal to carbon neutrality alone is not enough. ICAT, we are main country organization in Thailand. We cooperate with private and public sector to building toward the creation of the ecosystem to ensure that the goal allow the decarbonization and sustainability and also green finance are aligned. We all know that the decarbonization, ESG, and sustainable finance are related linked. And every country we set the goal to be the decarbonized and reduce temperature as we have a commitment on COP27. And the investor now are more concerned about sustainability investment. Also in Thailand, the financial sector is now stimulate the market. They have a financial to green fund, green loan, or sustainability linked bond to track the KPI of the company as follow to the sustainability ESG concept. So ICAT, we reach out for the energy sector and financial sector because we all know that now IE market in Thailand is now increasing. So IPP and SPP, they want to invest for more the new power plant for the next plan. We believe that to accomplish Thailand to the roadmap of carbon neutrality, we place an priority on ESG and to drive toward the tool which will help Thailand, especially in SME, to encourage, educate, and support them to the carbon neutral and achieve the sustainability goal. We can, as you know, that we are energy sector. Our ability is to support Thailand in energy sector. So we work closely together with the regulator to support the new RE proportion in Thailand and also with the utilities. And for green certificate, because the RE market is growing, so the REC market is so interesting because the new portion of IE will increase the REC market too. So it's related things. And EGAT now we are an the IREC issuer standard for Thailand. So we educate and facilitate like energy market in Thailand. And we also seek for opportunity with the collaboration among the energy attribute certificate standard around the world. We also have a partner in who expert in financial sector. We're working with a regulator who works on taxonomy and support the commercial bank for the financial sector. And hopefully end of this year, we will have the criteria for that. And last but not least is the reporting and monitoring. It is the most important part to confirm that what we have done, the result can be seen on the report, right? And the reporting according to the international standard is not only for environment data, but we also place a value on the social and governance as the concept of ESG. Yeah, and this is the most important part that Thailand will have to increase their competitiveness for SME also. Together with the ecosystem, we do believe that Thailand will accomplish a goal to be a carbon neutrality in 2050. We continue to like develop and drive the electric industry in Thailand and ASEAN, and not only for energy sector, we will bring together with financial sector, industrial sector, because we believe that the world can change to better, and to change better world, we must work together with our sector, our stakeholder, to create a sustainable ecosystem. Like we hope so. Thank you.
Thank you, Kun Nichari. Last but not least, Samir is our next speaker. He's a principal at Responsibility. He has 15 years of experience as fixed income specialist across investment banking and debt capital markets. He has experience in developing financial solutions for project finance, working capital for companies in the infrastructure sector. Samir.
Thank you, everyone. And thank you for my fellow panelists. I think they have made very valid points. Let me start, before I launch into the presentation, a quick background on Responsibility. We are a 20-year-old organization. We are a Swiss firm focusing on impact investments, especially in emerging and frontier markets. We focus on financial inclusion, climate finance, and sustainable food. In climate, we have been investing for nearly 8 to 9 years now across emerging markets, including Asia, and currently manage around $1 billion of capital. That said, I think, just to build on what Ragini and Peter were pointing out, that the need for capital is there. We all know that the financing needs are huge. What I really want to cover is the challenges we face in accelerating private investments into climate or clean energy investments. The idea is a lot of organizations like ADB, IFC are doing a lot of good, but to really kind of create an impact, we need participation from private investors in investments in clean energy. So I think that's what we are trying to see. Okay, thank you. Yeah, so what's the current scenario? And I'll just kind of rush through this because everybody has heard about this. Emerging markets are today one of the largest emitters of greenhouse gases. That's natural because they are growing, they are industrializing. So that is critical. That's a stated fact. But what is also important is they are highly vulnerable at the same time. The impact of climate change is felt severely in these markets. So it's imperative that we focus on what solutions we can provide and solutions that can be provided at scale. And what is the market reality? Like I said, the financing gap is huge. Looking at the scale of investments required, Peter mentioned that we are scaling up at a very fast rate, but still the gap that's there is substantial. And we need to kind of generalize private investments to try and bridge that gap as much as possible. And there is willingness. Let me be honest, it's not that the private sector is not participating, but there are a set of challenges that need to be overcome for us to really start feeling good about it. And what are the key challenges we have seen in the market as an asset manager, right? Our objective is we go out and talk to these investors and try to get them to invest in climate, generally through our own funds. But we understand their issues as well. We would highlight a few of them over here. So what are the key risks? I can bucket them into 3 or 4 major categories. Obviously, there would be a lot of other granular details, but one of the key risks that private investors see in investing in climate or clean energy projects in emerging markets are macro risks. What does that mean? It means there is a certain risk perception that they have for investing in emerging markets or markets outside their primary area of knowledge. So I think that is something that is paramount for them. Not a lot of them actually have emerging market practices or investment track record. So I think we have to kind of give them time to understand these markets. Secondly, let me be honest, not all emerging markets are easy to invest in. There are a host of local laws and regulations that make it quite challenging for these investors to come and invest or even support investments in these emerging countries. So that is for them, ability to put in capital easily is also a big factor. So I think that's one. And finally, you need support from the local banking and the international FX markets. A lot of projects, for example, are in local currencies. Now, if they are not able to hedge these local currency risks, it becomes very difficult for them to actually invest or support projects in these markets. So I think these are the, I would say, top 3 risks that we see from a macro perspective why investors face some challenges. What is the other requirement? Regulatory and legal. Now, what do we mean by that? You need policies that are, I think favorable is still okay. It's more important to be stable and long-term. So there is clarity. People can make decisions basis the comfort that once I have decided or taken some certain factors into consideration, they would be relevant for till the time of my investment. You cannot have regular changes in policies, ad hoc taxes and stuff like that, which is a big detriment for these investors to invest. You need judicial systems. You need to be able to enforce contracts, enforce security in a country. That is important. Even international laws, in the sense, if you have arbitration awards, you should be able to go and enforce those in these markets. That gives them comfort that, okay, tomorrow if things do not work out the way they want, there is at least a way they can try and recover something. Ease of doing business, that is a more operational point, actually, in the sense that if you invest in a project, does the project get stuck in red tape in a country? Now, that is also a critical point. We do rely on local developers to kind of have better knowledge of these markets. But if the perception is the market is regulatory heavy, the permits will not come in time, there is no clear roadmap or time frame for awarding of permits, it creates a negative impression and makes it more challenging to kind of deploy capital. The last is environment, social, and governance. It's a more generic point applicable to all markets, honestly. Business and technology risk. This is again important. See, the private investors, they might have a small pool of capital to take real risk. They generally an insurance company or pension fund wants to play safe with their money. They are very comfortable investing in proven technologies. You have today infrastructure projects are fairly standard. You have large scale renewable energy projects which people understand and have decent amount of funding available. But if you now start moving towards new technologies, and we need new technologies to come to the forefront to really solve the climate challenge, there the appetite is fairly limited. It could be due to lack of understanding of the technology, limited track record, but that's a challenge that needs to be overcome. There are ways and means to do it. Yeah, there are grants, there are investors like development finance institutions who help prove the commercial scope of a technology and then try and get private investors to support the real growth. But this is a very real challenge. Scalability and supply chain, this is a more business model related question. One is the technology might be good, but is the supply chain there that can support creation of a business at scale? And scale is important for private investors. They are not really geared to do small ticket investments. They do not have that bandwidth or the manpower to actually focus on small ticket investments. So you really need scale in that business. Not everything is market and external challenge. Honestly, there a lot of these investors do have internal challenges as well. Primary of this, and this is more anecdotal after meeting quite a few of them. Like I said, they have limited, in a lot of cases, they have very limited exposures to markets beyond their home country or home geography. So that is, they take time to understand the risk associated with investing in an emerging market. So that's a challenge. There is no way to fast track it, but it has to be, that's something they are solving themselves. Lack of organizational objectives. So what we mean by that is a lot of these organizations have stated goals that yes, we want to invest in climate, and it comes from their management. But you start talking to the investment teams, they're working day in, day out and making decisions. There is sometimes a lack of clarity in what they really want to do and how the management's message actually gets translated into action. There is a gap sometimes, which I think, for them, yes, they understand they need to do something, but it will take some time. And last, like I said, they have limited bandwidth. The teams themselves are not, even though they employ tons of people, but if you look at the investment teams, they each have their area of expertise. Climate is something of a new sector. It's up and coming, but right now, yes, we do face challenges on bandwidth as well. What is required? See, obviously, this is not like, there's no easy answer to this, and let me, not kind of oversimplify, but what is required from people like us is patience and persistence. We do raise funds from these private investors. We understand it takes a lot of time. You have to be patient. You have to be persistent. There are a lot of questions that needs to be answered for them to get comfortable. But the advantage is, once they come on board and they see track record, they are able to deploy large pools of capital very quickly. So I think that's the reason. Clear communication of the investment thesis. I'll take just 1 minute more. So like I said, because this is new to them, the markets are new, the products are new, you have to be very clear and concise in terms of the information you want to pass to them, which they can digest and understand. Innovative approach, Pete also alluded to that blended finance kind of products really helps them get comfortable with new technologies, new markets. I think that is one of the solutions we see, which helps us bring scale to these markets. Yeah, and I think the last is support from other institutions, multilaterals. It's team effort in the end of the day, and we have more participants who are trying to achieve the same objective. So I think people working together really helps us achieve those. There would be more, I think, and people are free to add that. But I think that should summarize quickly what is the message we wanted to pass.
All right, great. Thank you very much for all of our 4 speakers. Can we all give them a big hand, please? Yeah, now it's next is a Q&A session. So can I invite all the speakers come up on the stage? So yeah, we have received some questions through the application, so we will go through that first. And but also feel free to raise questions with the mics in the room as well. Okay, so some technical issues on the app. So any questions on the floor while we fix the app issue?
Yeah, so thank you for the question. The one that we did as part of the TREB, Tonga Renewable Energy Project, which is owned by the utility TPL. The one that we are trying to build would be from the private sector. So the same IPP would have the BESS plus the solar.
Okay, great. So the first question, I will address it to Peter. So the question is, what kind of regulation that you think developing countries should amend or create to attract private investment in renewable energy?
How long do we have? Well, I think Samir spoke very eloquently to the sort of regulatory environment that's necessary to really mobilize investment. And I would broadly concur with pretty much everything he said. I think it's not so much a question of individual focusing on individual regulations. It's more a question of this overall stability of the environment, so that both project developers, entrepreneurs, and investors can plan for the long term. What we've seen, I think, with PFAN, and I'm sure with many other organizations, is once you have volatility in the regulatory environment and the policy and political environment, that leads to increased uncertainty. The increased uncertainty leads to lack of engagement, reluctance to invest, and of course, price increase. And one of the things that we're battling already is the price gap that I spoke about. So I think it's the stability more than the individual regulation that is required. If you want to focus on things, I think the area that is most lacking across the region is off-grid, the energy access space. I think we're relatively well equipped in the meantime in the IPP infrastructure space. There's always going to be questions around whether the tariff on a PPA or on the open spot market is high enough. But I think the lacking areas are more in the off-grid, the energy access space, where there are gray areas where it's not clear what happens when grid arrival comes in the case of solar home system deployment or mini grid deployment and things like that. But I think it's more the stability that is the key there. I don't know whether Samir has other thoughts on that.
No, I think that actually proves, is very relevant in the sense of stability. Like I said, once you know what is there, you can plan for it, even if it's not favorable. Tomorrow, if it changes, there is an upside, nobody will say no to that. But there has to be clarity, especially for investors, to take that decision.
That's great. Thank you. Next, I will move to Ranishka. So there are a number of questions about Tonga. So I will aggregate some of the questions that we have. So on the BESS system, will it have a significant impact on the tariff on the user side? And second question is, in order to enable this rapid development of RE in Tonga, what kind of regulations the government has created to enable such development?
Thank you, So the first one is about the impact on the tariff because of the BESS being private sector financed. So this was one of the major concerns that even ADB and even the government had when we were scoping the project. So we did a lot of financial modeling, considering the demand growth and the oil prices. forecast of the oil prices and all of that. So based on all these assumptions, it came out to be the tariff would go down by about 10% from the existing prices, given the assumptions remain as it is. Now, whether that is good enough is a question in terms of financial or the tariff side of it. But also overall, the cost to the economy, because of as of now, I think 75,000 liters of diesel being used, a metric ton of diesel is being used annually, and the impact on the economy and on the foreign currency is huge, which is incomparable. So even a 10% reduction in the tariff was still beneficial for the country. So that's why finally the government and the policymakers decided even a 10% reduction in the tariff would probably a good reason for move forward, and also the other technical things like energy security and things like that. On the second question about the regulatory regime in the country, not to mention the weak regulatory scheme in the Pacific, and Tonga being one of them, and the Electricity Commission is very limited, has very limited capacity and staff. So that is still a challenging point for the future. So we have a couple of things in place to overcome that. So as part of our transaction advisory, we actually handle the regulatory part, which is not only the financial regulation, but also the technical regulation. Also, ADB has a regional TA called Office of the Pacific Energy Regulators Alliance, called OPERA. I see some of the OPERA members are here. So that provides the regulatory support for the region as a technical assistance from ADB. So that also covers some of the future challenges.
No, thank you. We have a number of questions related to that just popping up now. So maybe why don't you address that now? So the next question is, do you foresee any conflict or issues with IPP owning BESS as compared to utility owning BESS?
Difficult question to answer, and because if you look at from the utility side, there's reluctance to have these grid services to be given to the private sector. But also on the other hand, the private sector would like to have the grid services with them because they have a lot of flexibility. So that's a fine line between who should own the BESS. The grid forming batteries, which is technically grid forming batteries, are still with the utility, which is the existing ones. The new ones, finally, the decision was to have it with the IPP. There was discussions where to keep it, but then final decision was to keep it with the IPP. Obviously, there was reluctance initially.
Okay, thank you. Maybe we'll move on to Ragini. So the question is, well, on your last slide, you talked about deployment, the development versus deployment, and where the financing sits in. How should we think about what are the key considerations when we think about the transition between those two phases? And yeah, how should we think about in terms of choosing which one is the right mode of financing during that transition period?
Great question. Thank you. So I think it is the market which decides whether the technology is ready. So higher the adoption you have, that means that there are more paying customers. As soon as the paying customers come in, then you need to scale up your production facilities and things like that. So as soon as that happens, then the core innovation, new, the lab work, the kind of all that should come from equity. But as soon as you scale, you build in new production facilities, you have raw material, you have payables, you have receivable. That's when you bring in debt. But again, each industry is different, each technology is different. So I think the way to think is that what are one-time expenses which will take a long time to generate revenue should be the ones which should come from equity and which are new, which are not proven. Once it comes into a proven asset, then different finances. You can take debt for capital expenditure and a revolving or a shorter term loan for working capital. But I think the ideal mix and what is a one-time investment versus what will give you recurring revenues. I think that's the way to look at
One can
Mm.
I make a point there as well? Of course. This is a really interesting question. We at PFAN, the companies that we work with, they often ask sort of very early on, what's the ideal debt equity ratio? And you know that depends on your business, as I think Rodriguez just said. Depends on the sector, it depends on the business and the maturity of your business. In terms of maximizing the return on your capital, you want as much debt in your company as possible. But it does depend on what you're trying to finance. You want to finance, in general, your long-term assets through equity, your short-term assets, your working capital through debt, rule of thumb. But if you do not have cash flow, you cannot raise debt, and you will need to have the equity in place in the first place. And the problem with the early stage companies is generally they do not have cash flow, and they do not have enough equity to raise the cash or to have a higher valuation if they're raising more equity. And that's the trap they're in. And that was my point, really saying that we need more mezzanine finance, because the mezzanine finance postpones the valuation of the company to a later stage and enables the developer or the company owner to take a higher stake in that business going forward. So I think that's.
No, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for that.
There is one.
Is it related to this question? Yes, please go ahead then.
I want to ask some question about the business model for renewable energy. As we know, more and more countries in Southeast Asia set up their spot markets for renewable energy. But under this kind of business model, the input energy and the tariff fluctuate every day, every month, every year. So my question is this kind of business bankable? Thank you.
Any takers? Samir?
So if I understand correctly, you're saying with more and more projects coming online, are they bankable? In a nutshell, that's the question, if I'm not wrong. Yeah, emerging market. Yeah.
No, merchant market. The merchant market, is it bankable?
See, right now, the way we see that, right, development of spot markets eventually is a very important step and democratizes the entire process of developing projects. But right now, we feel a guaranteed kind of an offtake or a way where you can, where there is surety of you will get revenue for your energy that you develop and sell is important to initially establish the stability of the market and the ability to actually execute projects at scale in a market. Once you have scale, yes, you can transition to a merchant market. You can start exporting. Let me give you an example. India, initially, it was being, when you have power projects for commercial and industrial off-takers, it was just rooftop. Then it moved to ground-mounted open access, where you could use the infrastructure, the state infrastructure within a state to transmit power from one location to another. And now we see interstate kind of supply of power. So there is a development cycle for us to reach there. The initial phase definitely has to be executing projects and showing the ability to actually generate cash. And then you can move to the next step, is merchant power and trading. Yeah. So.
No, I'm not able to respond to that.
No, I think that's a
Yeah.
good answer.
Okay, yep. No, thank you for that. Can I move on to Kunnichari? So the question from the audience is, IGAT is a leading utility in the region. on the demand side management and energy efficiency. Can you tell us more about EGAT's work in the area, your plan for the future expansion in the area? And the second question is, Thailand is looking to build more renewable energy capacity. And do you have any plans for upgrading your grid to take on more renewable energy into your grid system?
Yeah, ICAT, we are the main country organization in energy sector. We do by follow the policy from the government. So now we see that the new policy has to increase the portion of renewable energy, and we also like stimulate the market and the IPP, SPP to like expand more portion of RE in our sources like hydro cannot is solar, wind, biogas, biomass. Our portion, we are now setting the goal for the new PTP plan. And I think the most challenging is the gap between the financial sector, because we see that the demand and supply on the like electricity in Thailand, and IPP and SPP, they want to expand more, but the financial sector is more concerned about the green finance, the KPI, the tracking system. So we give hand to financial sector to like setting the goal, setting the criteria for the like green investment. Yeah. And the first question for India, right? Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Can I move on to Samir then? Can you share some of what responsibility has done in Asia in relation to
Sure.
energy?
In climate, see, we have been investing in climate in Asia for the past 8+ years now. And when we started, we were focusing largely on energy access and distributed energy projects. 6-7 years back, your CNI, and when we say commercial industrial solar projects, were at a very nascent stage. We started investing in that. Today, that is one of our key sectors we focus on across South Asia and Southeast Asia. Increasingly, we are now moving towards more carbon mitigation, not moving, but adding more and more segments where we would want to invest, which includes energy efficiency and carbon mitigation projects, your circular economy, waste recycling, water recycling kind of technologies. That is what we are really focusing on. And the third aspect where we are looking to, or where we have started investing, is e-mobility and its entire value chain. So I think for the next couple of years, we would really like to kind of focus on these segments. A couple of them are fairly new, so we are looking to kind of take it to a stage where it becomes more commercially acceptable for local financial institutions to start participating.
Thank you. The next question, I think they're related. It's related to the financing modality of some of the businesses that some of the audience has in mind. One question is related to solar leasing business, and what would be the right mix of funding for such a business. So that's the first question. The second question is also related. So it's energy access projects, small scale mini grids, for example, are not always financially attractive. What kind of private sector financing would be a good fit? And yeah.
Okay, I'll take. So the first question is what's a good mix? Going back to Peter's answer, there is no right there's no right mix. It depends on where is the project located, who you're selling to, what is your real expectation in that sense. For new markets, obviously it has to be the equity component has to be higher, because it might be perceived risk, but it's still risk that needs to be demonstrated, mitigated in the beginning. So there is no answer. Once a country matures, it moves much closer to a standard project financing transaction, and where you'll get 70-75% debt. But for a lot of these emerging market countries, and when private investors are first coming in, or commercial investors are first coming in, it is on the lower side. There is capital available, but you have to demonstrate that, like I said, one is feasibility of the project and scalability of the business. So at the initial stages of these businesses, the amount of debt available will be low, and you have to factor in that when you set up your projects in terms of your return expectations. The second question was for mini grid or an off grid kind of solutions. Unfortunately, yes, that's been a challenging sector for us, especially in Asia. We have done a lot of energy access investments in Africa, but to successfully translate that to mini grids in Asia has been a challenge for us. Again, it boils down to the same issues in the sense investors have not really seen scale. It's still largely grant funded or funded by soft capital. I believe that is going to be the case for the next few years as well, till we can really demonstrate to private investors that this is a business where you can, if you invest, you can get your money back at a certain return threshold. So yeah, it's a challenge. There's no doubt about it, and I want to sugarcoat it. But hopefully, like I said, we need institutions, the MDBs, ADB, to kind of support the growth and fairly commercialization of that sector to really attract private capital into off-grid or mini-grid kind of solutions in the region.
Yes. Probably I can add some to the second question about the mini grids. What is the best financial mechanism for the private sector? Taking an example from Fiji, Fiji has about 75 islands still to be electrified because these are mini grids. Not really island, 75 villages. So for the last 7 years, I've been trying to find the correct mechanism. Still was not able to find it. Like Samir said, it's very challenging. We did few pilot projects. Certain funding agencies have given some funding for private to catalyze, but still that's challenging. So if you ask what is the correct financing mechanism, I would struggle to give an answer.
Can I make a point on the mini grid and where PFAN is actually working, and we met with Ranishka recently in Suva on an initiative together with the Fiji Rural Electrification Fund and UNDP to create a market mechanism to put a price on the financing gap. As I think we all accept for mini grids at the moment, for a number of reasons, there is a financing gap, and you need to fund the upfront cost of capital and the load generation before a mini grid becomes really sustainably and commercially viable in the long term. And what we're doing together with the FREF and UNDP and a number of others, including with support from DFAT in this case, is to create a market pricing mechanism to put a price on that subsidy level. So rather than go in and say the subsidy level should be X%, at the moment, the experience in Africa might indicate that you need 70%, 80% subsidy going in to your capital cost. We want to create a competitive environment between operators of those mini grids in the outer islands to get them to bid for concessions, and that way drive the concession down, and get a long-term private operated sustainable solution as a result of that. But the reality is that you need that upfront market creation subsidy to be able to go in the first place at the moment. Unless you are prepared, and it's usually not politically acceptable to have a very, very high tariff, of course, but that's usually not politically acceptable from a government or a community point of view.
I just wanted to comment on the first thing on the business model, because mini grid I think has been. So the way to look at the business model is who's going to own the asset and who's going to pay the money. So I think everything then works around it. So is the company who's employing the solar panel or facility, are they owning it or are they just paying for the power? Then you need different mechanisms. You get, but suppose you own it, you're buying it for yourself, then there are, interesting models around selling the extra load that you are creating. So all the creativity is around who is owning the asset and who is paying for it. And then the equity, debt, everything falls in place accordingly.
Oh, thank you very much.
Attention please. ADB HQ experienced a minor tremor a short time ago. Building assessment is ongoing. There is no need to evacuate. Normal activities can continue. ADB HQ experienced a minor tremor a short time ago. Building assessment is ongoing. There is no need to evacuate. Normal activities can continue.
Okay, let's continue. So let's continue.
I thought it was just the earth-shattering reservations coming from the panel.
Yes. Okay, we have a limited time left, so I think no, thank you again for all these questions. There are a lot of questions coming in, so thank you again for participating. The one question that I would like to probably finish off is, what is the best use of philanthropic investments or blended finance or and so on in accelerating private sector investment? What would be the best use of it?
Okay, I'll take. So it's a very critical component of climate finance. Let me be very honest, and there are multiple uses. 2-3 things. One is it can be used to open up new markets. Go and invest in new countries where you see there is opportunity. Demonstrate that these projects can be actually financed. That's one. Second is new technologies. You could really go and finance new technologies, do pilot projects, help these new age entrepreneurs with early seed capital, kind of, they have a product, but they have not really taken it to the market, help them prove the commercial feasibility of those products. That really helps. And thirdly, from a pure financing perspective, when the time comes, when we start setting up these investment vehicles, take a more junior piece into that, kind of provide a risk cushion, so that these investors get comfort that tomorrow, if there are losses to a certain extent because of various reasons, there is some capital available to absorb those losses. So I think these 2-3 things really kind of should help, and they are helping. This is how it is being done today, and this is the basis of blended finance, honestly, that you have a risk cushion to provide, take these kind of risk and then attract private capital.
So I'll just add, I think all of what you said is relevant. I think there is need to incentivize entrepreneurs and fund managers as well. And that's where it could take a form of pay by results. So when an entrepreneur achieves low emission, it doesn't have to be around climate. It could be general, low emission, higher gender sort of participation across the chain. Then they need to be rewarded at entrepreneurs, and even fund managers, the carry, there should be an extra carry for achieving ESG objectives and climate, because that's when that's where you move the needle in the market. And, I think blended finance would be very useful for that.
Just a couple more points, and certainly would subscribe to both of those views from Samia and Raniga. The other area, I think, is this market creation, working from the bottom up and ensuring that the blending happens not just at the top of the funnel, if you think of the diagram that I was talking about, but also at the side. Because otherwise you have this effect that the blended finance tends to push down, and you get the private finance coming in too late and at higher prices that is not able to be provided or returned by the assets that we're dealing with. So using them to create markets, using to come in with risk guarantee mechanisms, credit enhancement mechanisms, and pushing that valuation decision further down the chain. so that you're not putting a valuation on the company when you can't put a valuation on the company and you defer it till later.
Okay, so I think the time is up for a session. So I would like to thank all our speakers on the floor. Thank you very much for your insightful remarks. And again, thank you to all the ones in the audience who participated. I mean, I have a hard time trying to juggle all the lots of questions that's coming through. So thank you again for participating. Yep, thank you very much, and be calm, and nothing's happening.